This is the Spirit and Wellness Show. News and information from a higher perspective. With your host, Harry Wilkinson.
Yes, hello. This is your host, Harry Wilkinson, and welcome to the Spirit and Wellness Show. This is the show where we take a look at the week's and days' events and come at them from a different angle. We come at them from a higher perspective. We come at them from a spiritual perspective. Yes, spiritual, the dreaded S word. Oh my goodness. Another crazy God warrior lunatic. No, I'm not really. I truly am not. I do believe in spirituality. I do believe people have a spiritual nature that is inherent in being just a human being. And I do believe that it has little and often nothing to do with what we think of when we talk about spirituality, which tends to be organized religion. Whenever you mention the S word, people jump to organized religion. And while that's understandable, I believe that it's incumbent upon us and very important for us to truly make the distinction, to truly understand that there is a difference between the spiritual nature that we all have and the idea of organized religion. It's a concept that basically is going in the opposite direction in many ways from spirituality. Organized religions are an attempt to bind people together in a common belief system, and by doing so, leave those that do not share the same belief system out, to make them other, to make those who believe a particular way special, while others are not special or even evil. And if they're not evil, they're just misguided and on the wrong path. That is the basis of organized religion. It's a very human idea to try to form a clique. Basically, that's what it is. It's like high school in a way. People get together and they form a clique, and they're the cool kids, and then the other kids that don't belong to that clique are the uncool kids. You know, it's a very ego-driven, kind of thing. And as I say, it's very much a part of the lower level human experience. However, spirituality shares little in common with that, other than the fact that religion does embrace the concept of there being a higher level of existing. Not just a higher power, but a higher way of being and a higher awareness. But that is pretty much the end of where the twain meet. I've explained this before, often on the show, and it bears repeating, so I'll repeat it again. You know, our spiritual nature is such that it requires us to have an appreciation of living in unknowingness, living in the mystery, because that is truly what our lives are about. We think we know stuff. We're sure we know stuff, and we go to great lengths to make sure that other people know we know stuff, and to teach other people stuff that we think they ought to know. And we do know stuff, but the stuff we know is minuscule compared to the stuff we don't know, and maybe can never know. And spirituality is our connection to something that is so much greater than us that we know we cannot quantify it. We cannot empiricize it. We cannot, make it fit into our modes and models and labels and everything else. That's the wonder. That's the greatness of life, is its ability not to fit into any of those prescribed theories. But in order to live in that mystery requires an embracing of it, which, many people are very uncomfortable with. We tend to want to feel like, as I say, we know stuff. We tend to want to feel like we are in control and we get it. And that, we know everything we need to know in life because we're so smart, we're brilliant, we figured it all out. And so now you don't have to live in the mystery if you believe in a certain way. If you are, Christian or Buddhist or atheist, you know all you need to know. If you're Christian, you follow Jesus. Jesus is the way and the light, and anybody who doesn't follow Jesus is, either going to hell or just sadly mistaken. Islam the same way, you follow Allah, and Muhammad as a prophet showed the way to follow Allah. If you don't do that, you're wrong, and you may need to be killed or at least made aware of your wrongness. If you're atheist, it doesn't exist. There's nothing beyond this life, so you don't even have to think about it. How handy is that? You don't even have to think about anything else. It's all BS, right? It's all nonsense, so you don't even have to bother your pretty little head about any of it. Yeah, that's what we do, because we're so uncomfortable with our own spiritual nature that we want to sort of jettison it to either someone who will take care of it for us, or just negate it as something that's just a silly story and has no reality. And that makes us feel more comfortable because we're more in control. We don't have to live in a mystery. We don't have to embrace that. We can know exactly what's going on, and that's how our life goes, and that's the answer, and no more questions, thank you. We like it that way, but that's not how the world works. It's not how reality works. And those of us who kind of get that and embrace the mystery are every day learning new things about ourselves, about the world, about each other, and possibilities, the endless, infinite possibilities that exist within us and around us. That's spirituality. All right, off my soapbox now. And today we're going to talk some more about neurolaw, which I left last week. I left the show talking about neurolaw, and I think I want to continue the discussion because I think it's a really important area of law, science, and just human social behavior. And I think it's something more and more that calls our attention because of the headlines that we've experienced in the past year. I'm sure you've noticed the headlines have been filled with people who have gone on rampages, killed people, kidnapped children, raped children. As I was talking about neurolaw last Sunday, at the very moment I was talking about these kinds of situations, another one was happening. A man in Idaho had kidnapped a girl. He was supposedly a family friend of the girl's family. He apparently killed her mother and little brother and then kidnapped her. You know, these are the kinds of headlines that we're hearing. And many people are disturbed by it, understandably. And neurolaw fits into an understanding of this that I think is more and more necessary in our world, certainly in the legal profession, in our judgments of these people, in our legal handling of these people. So I'm going to talk more about that. I'm going to go back and talk about guided imagery, which I mentioned the week before, but didn't get to go into too much detail. So we'll do a little bit more with guided imagery and what all that is about. And guess what's in the news, UFO fans? Area 51 is back. Yes, Area 51, the ground zero for all things alien. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the revealing of this place, this very special place that has been talked about since the 1940s. Alright, so first I'm going to go back and let's talk about this neurolaw concept. So to recap, if you will, neurolaw, it's an emerging field that involves science, and involves rule of law, and involves legislation, as well as philosophy, social psychology, and criminology. And basically what neurolaw does is say that the more we discover about the human brain, the more we understand that certain abnormalities, certain areas of the brain that have a perhaps dysfunction are responsible for behavior that otherwise would not exist. And we have talked about, I talked about a brief history of what they call the insanity defense in law, which is when, one can claim an innocence based on mental illness, that they didn't know what they were doing, that they were crazy when they did it, and how that insanity defense was much broader before the 1980s, when John Hinckley attempted to assassinate the President Reagan, and he was acquitted due to insanity. And many people didn't like that, so what happened was a narrowing of how the courts viewed mental illness. The idea of an insanity defense happened, so that now, basically, the only thing that you can, grant an insanity defense towards is if it's provable that the person who committed the act did not know the act was wrong, or was unable to tell right from wrong. He could, have a defense as a mentally handicapped person. But other than that, anything else would not, in a court of law, be considered insanity. Well, that in itself is kind of insane if you think about it, because anybody who is committing the kinds of acts that we talk about, like Ariel Castro, a man who kidnapped 3 teenage girls and kept them in his house for 10 years and repeatedly raped them and beat them. And this is not the behavior of anyone who is sane. I mean, it would seem to me that all people who indulge in this kind of behavior have a problem. They're insane. And this is not to let them off the hook. This is not to, let them go free. You're not going to do that. What you are going to do, once you understand that this is a person that needs help, is that you're going to protect them and the people around them from any kind of hurt they could possibly cause themselves or others. And then you're going to find a way to help, or at least learn enough about what's going on in that person's brain that you can use it for helping others down the road. But when we just act, and basically this is what we do, we act as if somebody like this man that I mentioned in Idaho, who kidnapped this girl and killed her mother and brother, or Ariel Castro, or a George Zimmerman, or the gentleman last summer who decided to start shooting in a crowded theater of people watching, the Dark Knight movie, or the young man in Connecticut who shot 5 and 6-year-old children. We look at these people and we make assumptions. We assume that their brains work the same as our brains work, but for some reason they were angry about something, or they woke up in a bad mood and decided to do these horrible things. Like they made a choice to do these things. That we don't understand why they would do it, because we wouldn't make that choice to do those things. We make the assumption that their brains work essentially the same as ours, and therefore they're just horrible people who chose to do horrible things. These aren't the kinds of things that people do normally. I think we can all kind of understand that. And what neurolaw is saying, and particularly a man by the name of Dr. David Eagleman, who is a researcher and a leader in this area of science, what they're trying to say is that these people have something going on in their brains. And the more we learn about the brain, and the more we learn about how that happens, the more we can help other people. Instead of, moralizing, instead of sending them to prisons and, just locking them away for the rest of their lives, how about taking an opportunity to find out what happened? How about finding out what it is that compels these people to do these acts? And what neurolaw says is that it is all brain related. Now, Dr. Eagleman, in an article he wrote for The Atlantic in about 2 years ago, in 2011, talks about how this works. And he uses one of the most famous incidents in our history, really sort of a precursor to all of the horrible things that we've had, increasing occurrences of over the years. Charles Whitman, in 1966. This is the guy who climbed to the top floor of the University of Texas Tower in Austin at the age of 25, armed to the teeth, and began to shoot indiscriminately at people everywhere. Killed families, killed innocent people, shot pedestrians. And enough time has passed since this man was shot by police, and thankfully there's been scientific investigation about what this man was going through. He gives some quotes from a suicide note that Mr. Whitman had left, and they're quite telling. One quote says, "I don't really understand myself these days. I'm supposed to be an average, reasonable, and intelligent young man. However, lately, I can't recall when it started, I've been a victim of many unusual and irrational thoughts." So there's that. And then another quote says, "It was after much thought that I decided to kill my wife Kathy tonight. I love her dearly, and she has been as fine a wife to me as any man could ever hope to have. I cannot rationally pinpoint any specific reason for doing this." Another part of the note says, "I talked with a doctor once for about 2 hours and tried to convey to him my fears that I felt, overcome by overwhelmingly violent impulses. After one session, I never saw the doctor again, and since then I have been fighting my mental turmoil alone and seemingly to no avail." They took his skull after he was dead and removed his brain, and they discovered a tumor called a glioblastoma. And this tumor had blossomed in an area of the brain called the thalamus and impinged upon an area called the hypothalamus, and also compressed a third region called the amygdala. The amygdala, you may know, is involved in regulating emotions, particularly aggressive and fearful emotions. It's well understood, even at that time it was well understood, that damage to the amygdala caused emotional and social disturbances. It had been known since the late 1800s that this could happen. And so what they discovered about Whitman is that this tumor is likely the cause of impulsive behavior that he had no control over. The article also goes on to talk about a man who was, at age 40, began to have strange sexual preferences start to emerge, and eventually was arrested for child pornography, and what was discovered was that it was an area of his brain, a massive tumor in his orbital frontal cortex. He had a tumor, and when they removed the tumor, the sexual appetites that Alex had been engaged in disappeared. He had a relapse, and he began to exhibit pedophilic behavior again, and they found that they hadn't gotten all of the tumor, and the tumor was regrowing, and so he went back under the knife. They removed the rest of that tumor, and his behavior returned to normal again. These are the things that neurolaw is discovering about the human brain. And what he wants to do is to take this knowledge and use it as a guide on how we create laws, how we judge these people who commit these crimes that admittedly horrify us, but with a greater understanding of the illness, We cannot, we can avoid judging them harshly and have compassion for them. See, these are people it's so easy not to have compassion for. And we love that, because these are people we don't have to feel anything about. We can hate them. We can project all of our bile and our anger and our hatred on these people, because they're worthless people. They don't deserve to live. They don't deserve any kind of compassion, because they did these horrible things. Well, when you look at it from the idea that they were perhaps helpless and unable to control themselves from doing these horrible things, and you think about the fact that you, in the same circumstance, with the same kind of dysfunction going on in your brain, could easily do the same thing. Maybe you're less quick to write them off as human trash. And that's what I wanted to say about neurolaw. And it's, again, taking up most of the show. But, alright. Let me get to Area 51, since I teased you about that. Now, the CIA has now confirmed, after how many years, that Area 51 actually did exist. And they actually were doing experiments and testing of U-2 planes. They say nothing, of course, about aliens or UFO sightings. But they do admit it exists. And apparently, that's a huge deal, because they wouldn't even admit to that. There's no such thing as Area 51. What are you talking about, you crazy people? Area 51, please. There's no such thing. Well, there was and there is. And now CIA has released documents that confirm that. What they confirm is that there was a lot of testing of U-2 planes. There was a lot of experimentation as to weaponry and that sort of thing. The story of Area 51, in case you don't know, is that in Roswell, New Mexico, there was supposedly a crashed spacecraft that was recovered and brought to this Area 51 and hidden from the public. And the government has denied there ever being an alien crash or alien life forms. And it's been the basis of TV shows, movies, speculation, and so forth. But so far, none of the documents that have been released regarding Area 51 say anything about UFOs. Well, I would think that, if there had been a UFO crash, I don't doubt that perhaps the government would have wanted to negate that or not let it be known. However, over the years, and there have been many people who have claimed to have, sighted UFOs twisting and turning over that base. It very well could be, but if it is, it's the best kept secret this government has ever had. I mean, really. You think about Edward Snowden in the news recently. This is a guy who revealed all kinds of classified documents. The WikiLeaks guy. It's really hard to keep a secret like that for very long. Certainly for 50 years. I'm not saying it couldn't happen. And if they are working with aliens, maybe the aliens have some sort of technology that enables that to happen. But I'm not sure. I'm an open-minded person, and perhaps there really is something to it. I don't know. But like I say, it seems to me like that's a secret that would be really hard for the government to keep. But who knows? There may be an awful lot of secrets out there. Well, my goodness. To come to the end of the show again. And I didn't even get to talk about guided meditation, so that will be our first topic next week. So, I look forward to seeing you then. Have a wonderful week.